You are standing on your back porch, a warm mug of coffee resting in your palms as the first light of dawn filters through the trees. It is a quiet, ordinary morning. You notice a squirrel near the base of an oak tree, twitching its nose, searching for a buried treasure from last autumn. You haven't moved. You haven't made a sound. But the moment you shift your weight, the floorboard beneath you gives a microscopic creak. In an instant, the squirrel vanishes. A blue jay in the branches above lets out a sharp, metallic cry and takes flight. The woods, which felt like a peaceful neighbor just a moment ago, suddenly feel empty. You are left alone with your coffee, wondering why your mere presence acted like a grenade in a crowded room. You aren't carrying a weapon. You don't have the claws of a bear or the teeth of a wolf. In your own mind, you are just a person enjoying the morning. But to the rest of the planet, you are the most terrifying thing that has ever lived. This silence is not a coincidence, it is a legacy. To understand why that squirrel ran, we have to travel back to a time before porches, before coffee, and before the word human even had a definition. We have to look at the moment a weak, shivering ape decided to stop running and started making the rest of the world run instead. You might assume that humans have always been the masters of their domain, walking through the tall grass with the confidence of kings. But for the vast majority of our history, that wasn't the case. 2 million years ago, in the scrublands of East Africa, our ancestor Homo erectus was essentially a glorified snack. We were slow, we were weak, and we were remarkably easy to catch. There are fossilized remains from this era that show the clear puncture marks of leopard teeth in the skulls of our ancestors. We lived in a world where the landscape of fear was dictated by massive saber-toothed cats and giant hyenas that could crush bone like it was dry kindling. In this era, animals weren't afraid of us because they didn't have to be. We were just another medium-sized primate trying not to get eaten before sunset. Our survival didn't come from being scary, it came from being hyper-aware. We were the ones freezing at every snap of a twig. We were the ones whose nervous systems were tuned to the frequency of predators. But then, something shifted. We didn't grow bigger muscles or sharper claws. We discovered fire. It was the first time an animal had decoupled its power from its own body. With fire we could push back the night. We could turn a dark cave into a fortress. For the first time, the predators had to look at a flickering orange light and realize that the rules of the game were changing. But fire was only the beginning of the nightmare for the animal kingdom. It's easy to think that a campfire was enough to flip the script of evolution. However, fire is a stationary defense, and the world is a very large place. To truly become the thing that haunts the dreams of every deer and elk, we had to find a way to take the fight to them. This led to the development of one of the most grueling and unsettling tactics in the history of biology: persistence hunting. Imagine you are a kudu, a large, powerful antelope. You are faster than any human. You can leap over bushes and disappear into the thicket in seconds. You see a group of hairless apes walking toward you, and you run. You leave them miles behind in minutes. You stop, catch your breath, and start to graze. But 10 minutes later, those same apes appear on the horizon, walking. Not running, just walking. You run again. You push yourself to the limit, your heart hammering against your ribs. You find a shady spot and rest. And then there they are again. They never stop. They don't have your speed, but they have something much worse: thermoregulation. Because humans could sweat and had lost most of their body hair, we could dump heat while moving. The antelope, covered in fur and unable to pant while galloping, eventually reaches a point of total physiological collapse. Its blood literally begins to cook its brain. When the human finally catches up, the animal is standing still, eyes glazed, unable to move a single muscle. The human didn't have to be fast, they just had to be inevitable. This taught the animal kingdom a chilling lesson. You can outrun a lion, but you cannot outrun a human's will. A slow, grinding chase sounds like the ultimate weapon, but it was actually quite inefficient compared to what came next. As the millennia rolled on, we realized that we didn't want to walk for 6 hours to get dinner if we didn't have to. We wanted to strike from a distance. About 40,000 years ago, the invention of projectile weapons, the atlatl, the bow and arrow, and the balanced throwing spear, transformed the human into something nature had never seen before: an invisible killer. Before this, every predator had a threat zone. If you stayed 50 yards away from a lion, you were generally safe. You could see the danger coming. But a human with a bow changed the geometry of the forest. Now, death could arrive from 100 yards away, silent and flying, launched by a creature you couldn't even see. This created a new kind of psychological pressure on wildlife. It wasn't just about avoiding a physical fight anymore. It was about avoiding the very sight of a human. Animals that were bold or curious were systematically removed from the gene pool. The only ones who survived were the ones who treated the mere silhouette of a bipedal ape as a death sentence. This wasn't just learned behavior, it started to become etched into the very biology of the survivors. We were pruning the personality of the wild, leaving behind only the paranoid. You might believe that as we transitioned into farmers and city builders, our impact on the wild became more distant and less terrifying. But the birth of agriculture and domestication actually intensified the divide. When we started clearing forests to plant wheat and raising fences to keep cows, we drew a line in the dirt. Anything on our side of the line was ours, and anything on the other side was a competitor or a threat. We didn't just hunt for food anymore, we hunted for control. We began a scorched earth policy against any predator that might threaten our livestock. Wolves, bears, and big cats were pursued not because we wanted to eat them, but because their existence was an inconvenience to our new way of life. We developed traps, poisons, and eventually, firearms. This was the era where the fear of humans moved from the individual level to the systemic level. We weren't just a predator in the woods, we were the architects of the landscape. Animals that could adapt to our presence, like rats and pigeons, thrived. But the true, wild animals learned that the smell of wood smoke and the sound of a human voice meant that their entire world was about to be reshaped. This historical weight is what leads us to the modern day, but the science behind this fear is far more precise than just a bad memory. In 2015, a landmark study led by Chris Darramont at the University of Victoria analyzed data from over 300 studies of human hunting and fishing. The researchers coined a term that has since become a standard in ecology: the super predator. They found that humans kill adult carnivores, the lions, wolves, and bears that sit at the top of their own food chains, at about 9 times the rate that these animals kill each other. In the oceans, we harvest adult fish at 14 times the rate of natural predators. This is a total reversal of how nature usually works. Most predators target the weak, the sick, and the young. Humans target the biggest, the strongest, and the healthiest. By doing this, we have become a force of nature that is mathematically impossible for an ecosystem to ignore. When an animal sees a human today, it isn't just seeing a hunter, it is seeing the creature that has systematically removed the strongest members of its species for thousands of years. The fear isn't just psychological, it's a rational response to a statistical anomaly. It sounds like this fear should only exist in places where people are actively carrying guns or bows, but the most unsettling discovery in recent years is that animals are afraid of our very souls, specifically our voices. Researcher Justine Smith and her team at UC Santa Cruz conducted a fascinating and slightly heartbreaking experiment with mountain lions in the Santa Cruz Mountains. They identified spots where mountain lions had recently killed prey and were returning to eat. They set up speakers and motion sensors. When a lion approached its kill, the speakers would play either the sound of frogs croaking or the sound of ordinary human conversation, just people talking about mundane things in a calm tone. The reaction was startling. When the mountain lions heard the frogs, they didn't care. They kept eating. But when they heard a human voice, they didn't just pause, they fled. They abandoned their hard-earned meal and ran into the brush. In many cases, they didn't return to the kill for days, or at all. The mere sound of us talking about the weather was enough to make one of the most powerful predators in North America decide that its food wasn't worth the risk of being near us. You might think that this is just a minor inconvenience for a few mountain lions, but the implications are much darker. When a top predator is too scared to eat its own food, it has to kill more often to make up for the lost calories. The fear we project into the woods creates a landscape of fear that ripples down through the entire food web. Another study in 2019 by Justin Sirachi took this further by broadcasting human voices across an entire forest for months at a time. The results were a total reconfiguration of the ecosystem. Large carnivores like cougars and bears moved less and avoided the areas with voices. Because the big predators were hiding, medium-sized predators like raccoons and foxes became bolder and ate more, which in turn decimated the populations of birds and small mammals. By simply existing and speaking, we were playing God with the survival rates of every creature in that forest. We don't even have to be there to hurt them. The ghost of our presence is enough to change the way the world breathes. However, it is a mistake to think that this fear is a universal constant of the universe. If you travel to places where humans have been absent for a long time, the super predator spell is broken. This is famously seen in the Galapagos Islands or parts of Antarctica. When Charles Darwin first arrived in the Galapagos, he was shocked to find that he could walk right up to birds and pick them up with his hands. They didn't fly away because they had no evolutionary history with humans. They hadn't spent the last 50,000 years watching their siblings get hit by arrows. This island tameness proves that the fear of humans isn't a natural part of being an animal, it is a scar. It is a specific, learned, and evolved response to our specific brand of violence. When we see a deer freeze in the woods, we shouldn't see it as a natural behavior. We should see it as a testament to what we have done. We have spent millennia training the world to hide from us, and we have been such effective teachers that the lesson is now written into their very DNA. As we move deeper into the 21st century, the nature of this fear is shifting once again. We are no longer just the invisible killer with a bow, we are the creature of light and noise. Our cities create sensory traps for animals. The lights from our skyscrapers disorient migrating birds, causing them to fall from the sky. The roar of our highways drowns out the mating calls of frogs and the warning cries of birds. We have created a world where the danger is no longer a single person in the woods, but the very infrastructure of our civilization. Some animals are adapting, becoming nocturnal to avoid us, or learning to navigate our trash cans like urban commandos. But for the vast majority of the wild, the modern world is a confusing, terrifying labyrinth of human signals. We like to think of ourselves as the protagonists of the story of Earth, the wise stewards or the brilliant innovators. But to a fox or a hawk or a wolf, we are simply the great silence. We are the thing that turns a forest into a cemetery and a meadow into a parking lot. This brings us back to that porch, that squirrel, and that quiet morning. We often wonder why we feel so disconnected from nature, why we can't seem to get close to the things we claim to love. We buy high-powered binoculars and long-range camera lenses so we can glimpse a world that refuses to let us in. We feel a deep, ancient longing to be part of the wild, to sit among the animals as if we belong there. But we have to accept the irony of our own success. We are disconnected from nature because we spent 2 million years making sure that nature was terrified of us. We won the war for survival so decisively that we deleted our own ability to be part of the community. Every time you walk into the woods and the birds stop singing, you are witnessing the respect and the terror that your ancestors earned through sweat, fire, and stone. You are the heir to a kingdom of ghosts, walking through a world that holds its breath until you leave. There is a final, chilling layer to this relationship that we rarely discuss. We are the only predator that understands what it's doing. A lion doesn't wonder if the gazelle is afraid. A hawk doesn't reflect on the landscape of fear it creates. But we do. We have the unique, painful ability to look into the eyes of a fleeing animal and recognize the fear we put there. We are the only monster in the history of the world that feels bad about being a monster. We try to set up national parks and pass endangered species acts, attempting to fix the very trauma we spent eons inflicting. But 1,000 years of conservation cannot undo 2 million years of predation. The fear is too deep. It's in the marrow. It's in the way a fawn's heart rate spikes when it hears the rustle of a nylon jacket. It's in the way a whale dives deeper when it hears the thrum of a ship's engine. We have built a world of incredible beauty and complexity, but we have built it on a foundation of absolute, shivering dread. As you finish that cup of coffee and head back inside, the squirrel will return to the base of the oak tree. The blue jay will land back on its branch. The woods will resume their business as if you never existed. They aren't going back to normal, they are simply waiting for the predator to return to its cage. We like to imagine that we have left the wild behind, that we live in a world of glass and steel where the old rules don't apply. But the wild hasn't forgotten. It remembers every spear, every arrow, and every bullet. It remembers the persistent footsteps that never stopped. It remembers the voice that meant death. We may have changed our story, but the animals are still reading the original version. They know who we are, even if we've forgotten. They know that behind the coffee and the porch and the quiet morning, there is an animal that doesn't stop until it gets what it wants. And they know that in a world governed by the laws of survival, the only thing more dangerous than a human who hates you is a human who thinks they are your friend. You can try to bridge the gap. You can leave out birdseed or build bat houses. You can volunteer for the local wildlife rescue and spend your weekends cleaning oil off of ducks. You can tell yourself that you are different, that you are one of the good ones, who truly cares about the planet. But you cannot talk to the genes. You cannot explain your good intentions to an amygdala that has been programmed by 50,000 generations of slaughter. To the rest of life on Earth, your kindness is just another unpredictable behavior from a creature that has proven itself to be the ultimate wild card. We are the only animal that protects what it used to hunt, and that makes us the most confusing nightmare of all. There is no middle ground in the landscape of fear. There is only the hunter and the hunted, the witness and the ghost. We chose our side a long time ago, and the world has a very, very long memory. Nature does not forgive, and it certainly does not forget. We are the only species that has turned the entire planet into a crime scene, and then had the audacity to wonder why the neighbors won't come over to visit. The silence of the woods is not a lack of life. It is a sign of life that is desperately trying to stay alive in your presence. We are the apex of an evolutionary journey that was paved with the bones of everything that couldn't hide fast enough. And so, the next time you walk outside and feel that strange, quiet distance between yourself and the natural world, don't be surprised. That distance is the only reason there is still a natural world left to look at. We are the shadow that never leaves, the voice that never fades, and the predator that eventually learned how to regret its own hunger. But regret doesn't change the fact that every time you step into the light, the rest of the world prepares to die. The squirrel is gone. The bird is silent. The lesson is finished. We are the masters of all we survey, and that is why we will always walk alone. Your ancestors did their job too well. They didn't just survive, they conquered the very concept of danger, ensuring that their descendants would never have to worry about being eaten by a leopard or chased by a hyena. But in doing so, they left us in a world where the only thing left to fear is ourselves, and where the rest of nature looks at us and sees exactly what we used to be. The legacy of the human race isn't just our art, our science, or our cities. It is the wide-eyed terror of a billion creatures who know our scent better than they know their own. We are the gods of an empty garden, and every time we reach out to touch it, it shatters. We are the only animal that can love the wild, but we are also the only animal that the wild can never love back. For eons, the world was a conversation between predators and prey, a balanced dance of hunger and escape. Then we arrived, and we didn't join the dance. We stopped the music. We became a predator that could hunt for fun, a hunter that could kill from a distance, and a killer that could remember its victims for 1,000 years. The animals didn't just learn to fear us, they learned that we were the end of the world. And so, as you put your mug down and step back inside your house, remember that the peace you feel is a privilege bought with the terror of everything else. You are the creature that changed the rules. You are the one who made the grass go quiet. And in the grand, ancient story of this planet, you are the only one who doesn't realize that the hunt never actually ended. It just became so efficient that we no longer have to see the blood. The world is watching you from the shadows, waiting for you to look away, waiting for the monster to go back to sleep. They have survived us this long by staying out of our reach, and they will continue to survive us by never, ever trusting us again. The conversation is over. The verdict is in. In the court of the wild, there is no appeal. You are human, and that is more than enough.